Greetings, friends. This week I'm talking to a prolific Blood Angels player that wins a lot of tournaments, and it's going to be a two-part video, so hopefully it answers a lot of questions that you might have about Arks of Omen. Let's get into it. Alright, good evening guys. Thank you for being here. I'm here with Sam Procopio from Canada. If you haven't met Sam before, he has been on the channel before, and Sam wins a lot of the GTs and bigger events over in Canada. I've had a lot of requests to have you back on here, Sam, and what we thought we'd do is we do this video in two parts. So part one will be about 5 questions, maybe 20 minutes here, where we talk in the Blood Angels Commander. The second part will be over on your channel, and we'll make sure there's a link to the second part of the chat in the video description. So thanks so much for being here, Sam. How you been?
Oh, thanks so much for having me on. I've been doing well and just happy to be back and you know, talk all things Blood Angels. I know we love our boys in red.
Yeah. So why don't we just start then before we go into any of the questions that I've got? Tell us a little bit about I guess like the events that you've been at recently, especially the one that you won, I guess.
Yeah. So I mean, post WTC, I took a bit of a long break from the game just to kind of focus on life and whatnot, and then I kind of jumped back into a GT towards the end of Nephilim, and I was lucky to actually take the victory there, going 5-0. And basically, I used that event to get ready for LVO. So you know, kind of forward fasting. You know, a couple weeks later, LVO was on the horizon. I thought I would, you know, go to an event the weekend before. I figured, screw it, may as well go all in to be nice and ready and sharp for that. And then, you know, I think a week or two before LVO, the GT the weekend before decided to go Arks of Omen, so not even Nephilim. So now I'm like, maybe I was regretting it. But then I went to the, you know, Arks of Omen GT, the first one of the year, and I actually was able to win that one too, going 5-0. And then I went to LVO the following weekend, and I didn't know what to expect. I played some really stiff competition. Unfortunately, I didn't make it into the top 8 or shadow round. I actually lost in round 4 against a Tau player, really great player. I think he made it top 8 back-to-back LVOs now. So I mean, that's a guy I think you're okay losing to. But I was lucky enough to go 5-1, and I think I finished 24th overall there. So definitely proud of that result. And then kind of forward fast a couple, you know, 3 weeks later after LVO, I figured why not keep on chugging along with the events, because I guess I've been on a decent run, and then I ended up actually winning my first ever major sized event, going 6-0. So I mean, chips have been, I guess, falling into place a bit, I guess I could say, but I'm sure that's gonna, you know, not always go my way every time.
I've been knocking it out of the park. So what? I mean, a matchup into Tau. I imagine that the terrain was sort of the defining factor of that matchup, was it? Or what really tripped you up with the Tau at LVO?
Yeah, so I mean, for those of you who maybe are familiar with LVO, because there's so many rounds, and it's quite literally 9 rounds plus a 10th if you do get the shadow round. They actually play the missions completely in order from 11 to 33. And the one mission I did not want to play Tau on was round 4, because you know, quick math will tell you that is mission 21, Abandoned Sanctuaries. And then there was one specific board I did not want to play on, which was this industrial like city, which basically blocks the entire middle, so you have no staging area in the middle. And then, of course, on Advanced Sanctuaries, you want to go second, right? Well, I kind of went first as well there. So, I mean, it was a bit of the hat trick against me, and I was actually proud of the fact that I only lost by 7 points to such a great player with all those against me. But naturally, I feel like as generals and a little bit of pride and ego comes into play, you think, oh, if only I played him on, you know, that table, and if I went you know, first on that table, and you know, those always naturally come to play first. But then I took a step back, realized that, you know what, hey, maybe I actually misplaced that ruin. Even with all the decision, or even with all the things going against me, I still think there was a way to win that game. So definitely a lot of reflecting and a lot of growth to take from it.
Nice, nice. Do you know what? I actually played Tau myself. Abandoned Sanctuaries going second.
Okay.
At an event, that was a team event that we won. I won my first event in January, but
yeah, congrats, by the way.
That's horrible, man. Like, it's the whole, every other game you're just praying for that roll so you could do your Forlorn Fury Death Company. That's the one. That's the one time that you're like, right, I just don't want to go first, and there's nothing you could do. You just have to put units on an objective. And in that game, I actually took an Impulsor because I figured now we get the free shield drone. Blade Guard veterans get their 4-up invulnerable save. I drove my Impulsor out onto one objective, right? because you think, well, you kind of want to hold 2, right? Because you don't just want 4 points and start a turn 2. And then they just blew up Impulsor with like crisis suits, blew up all the Blade Guard with the broadsides, and then I was just like, well, fuck.
Yeah,
like,
that's tough.
Yeah. So, what's changed for you though? Like in terms of like, I watched a little bit of your final game. I think the game you went 5-0 and you played. Was it? Was it Dukari you were playing at the top table? I watched one of the games where you had 2 squads of infiltrators down both sides of the board.
Yeah.
And I felt like one of the big changes maybe I've seen, I wasn't sure, I don't remember last time you ran lists, but had you been stat on infiltrators, or is that something you've picked up more since Arks of Omen?
Yeah, so that was in the finals against TJ, you probably saw when he was playing his Chaos Demons.
Oh, Demons, yeah, sure, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're all spindly bits, right? So, no, but yeah, the infiltrator thing has been more of a recent shift for me. Previously, I couldn't really, based on our meta and the metas that I was going into, I couldn't justify the 120 points and definitely not the Helix Gauntlet on top. I believe that was 130 points.
Yeah.
Total for that unit. Now, and I've said this like four other occasions where it's like, God bless Jack. He took the 3 units and it worked for him. I didn't really plan to play against GSC or Demons, even though I probably should have. And I actually did play GSC once at LVO, but prior to Arks of Omen, for those points, I wasn't really too thrilled with the value of them. But now, considering it's 100 points, and I've always paid 100 points for intercessors, or 105, I believe it was for incursors. Now with the Helix Gauntlet, to me personally, I don't think I can leave home without at least minimum 2 in every Blood Angel list.
That's good to know. Yeah, I think I'm running 2 in my list. I'm away to GT in like 2 weekends, and part of me really wanted to get that 3rd squad in there. Right, like it's funny that they finally gave us the choice of like, hey, you don't need to compulsory take 3 troop units, and I'm like, man, I really want that 3rd troop unit. I also really like the versatility now for like bringing them out of the backfield after you're sort of done screening. Like most armies, I suppose, like by turn 3, nothing else is coming in, so it's time you can just move out and actually do something with them, whereas before you had them like just camped in the backfield, 100 points, doing nothing, which was... I've actually really liked the change to sticky objectives.
Yeah, I really do too. I think it's made a not a massive difference, but I think a good a good strategic difference in terms of just you preparing and planning a couple of turns ahead to understand that certain resources can now be somewhere else, where once that was just literally impossible without playing specific missions. So, I mean, I have gone in terms of going for the 3 infiltrators now personally, just because, again, I think this is totally meta dependent. So for you, I believe, and obviously, your meta better than anybody, I think the 2 probably will work for you. And then in terms of like my meta, for example, we have a couple of really top Genestealer call players. We have a couple of demon players, multiple players that have abilities in their army that can, teleport. So like Kazarkin right now are pretty big. So there's going to be guard everywhere. I'm pretty sure, there's a couple of Grey Knight players. So anyway, I'm just keeping those matchups in mind where, that 3rd infiltrator squad might actually add that extra bit of redundancy that I might personally need. But I always, I recommend to everybody I talk to, is just, take a look at the grand scheme of your meta and then kind of make the decisions based on that. And that's not list tailoring. That's just being ready for battle in my opinion. But that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think this week we've just seen the World Eaters Codex come out, and like Angron coming back to life repeatedly. Infiltrators are going to be great against that, because they're just, if Angron comes back alive and he's 12 inches away, then you just kill him again, I guess, before he gets to charge you. Which is going to be I think I'm playing World Eaters this week as practice. I'm a little bit scared of Angron coming back every time. Have you had any experience against that yet?
No, I actually haven't. I'm going to get my first practice game, I believe, next week, possibly against them. And if not, I'm sure I'll be christened in the battles of, or the flames of war at my next major I'm going to in a couple of weekends. So it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, have you played Iron Hands yet since Arks of Omen?
You know what? I actually haven't either. I haven't played against them. Yeah, it's, interestingly enough. I mean, I could literally tell you who I've played against, but I have played against New Guard. Which was a very interesting game. And I played against a very top level player who traveled actually from the US. up to Canada. So I mean, that was a scary game, and I was able to take that game actually, which I was very surprised about. But it's just like the tools in that army are just absolutely incredible.
I was going to say, how did you find the mortal wound spam from those hotshot las guns slash volley guns? I assume that's what he was running if he was running the 10 Karakin, was it?
Yeah, the Kazakin.
Yeah, because I was doing the maths on that, and it's like you can make 36 hits, and every 6 to hit is a mortal wound, and you can target multiple units and do 6 mortals to multiple units. It sounds disgusting.
It's absolutely insane, but just full transparency on that, I actually didn't get shot by the Kazakin once in the whole game. So I mean that made a big difference.
Okay,
obviously.
I mean,
obviously,
terrain is Blood Angel's favorite. It's our favorite tool, really, to win battles. So I guess last question before we move forward into some of these other questions that I have. Are you still 100% on a mobility-based list, or have you brought in any storm shields? Because I guess some people, myself included, I guess, I've started bringing like 10 storm shields to games. What are you looking at? You confident you don't need them? Or how do you look at that?
Yeah, there's a really, really great argument now to include storm shields in your list. And personally, I think mobile storm shields will be the way. Now, I know off of just saying those two things together, I've just implied Vanguard veterans only. But I really do feel like they're not fully needed still, personally. I mean, again, this is all based on playstyle. So if you're more of a control player and you want to actually kind of just start to influence the board centrally and kind of just have more of a, I guess, reactive, more like conservative approach, I absolutely think Blade Guard are fantastic. I think a couple of Vanguard units are going to be great too as well. That's just not totally how I play my game. My game's a lot more proactive. I am also reactive, but again, very matchup dependent. But for me, I like to play a denial game, and that requires a lot of fast-moving parts to that, and a lot of different things going in different areas. So I can't really afford for any truly slow aspects of my game personally. Now, of course, I can obviously bring some of these units in and make them work. Like I've made the aggressors work pretty well. But the reason why I've kind of leaned towards that is because now that's a T5 body with 3 wounds versus a T4 body, or possibly a 2 wound model in the midboard with a storm shield. So I'm trying to at least make up for that durability in other aspects when I don't have the storm shield, or at least the ability to transhume at the very least and cover, so to speak. But yeah, kind of overall though, I do feel like for me personally, I think the more mobile list is what's going to help, I think, Blood Angels personally. But like I said, very much comes down to play style.
So what was it you were running? You were running 3 aggressors or 4 aggressors? I don't remember.
At the event, it was a 5-man aggressor unit.
It was 5, and what they're heading centrally, or are they strategic reserving, or what you thinking for them?
They always start on the board, and really depends on the matchup. Tells me exactly what they'll do. So against demons who virtually had no shooting, they were super aggressive. I'm pretty sure for those of you who watched the game, they were just, I'm talking dead center of the board, top of 1, because I think I rolled a 5 on the advance. So I mean, like, it was we're not always gonna roll 5s and 6s, but I mean, when you take it, you gotta use what you have. So that was that game. But against guard, they were literally behind a ruin in the back corner all game. So I mean, that was really, I mean, it's obviously matchup dependent, but I feel like a lot of people need to really evaluate a certain unit, bring it in with the ability that it could do 2 different things completely for you. So for example, if you're going to bring in some sort of support unit to kind of help your mobile or help your more sturdy infantry, make sure that I could do one of 2 different roles for you, where you're not really afraid that, if I have this unit hiding in the back corner, am I going to lose the game because of that? With the aggressors, the answer is no. And then in some games where it's like the aggressors need to get forward for me, and again, insert whatever unit works for you, can that unit afford to start getting a bit more aggressive, a bit more forward? Then it's like, now all of a sudden this unit really starts to do a lot of different functions, more than you've even once thought it could.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I felt the change from Nephilim to Arks of Omen was like, we trade, or we're even more of a trading army, right? Like Death Company and Sanguinary Guard, like they just you just have to trade and expect almost to lose the whole squad if the enemy has any sort of counter punch. So that was a bit of a mind shift for me, and maybe full disclaimer, I'm going to run a squad of Terminators and a squad of Blade Guard to my GT. I've run Terminators before. People always tell me I'm mad for running them. I like them. I guess it's If you've got if you've got tricks to get 7-inch charge from deep strike, then I think they become a lot more viable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. So these are random questions that I put together, and we have 10 of them, and we could talk about them for as long as we want.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so is there anything else? Like, I think I could be. I don't think I'm confusing with you with Jack. You ran Outriders as well, right?
Yeah, at the one the first Arks of Omen list I ran. Well, obviously I did run the 5 Inceptors, which were, not costed where they are currently.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that was like the 1 week I had or everyone had with them. So yes, I did run them at the cheaper points. But other than that, I ran 3 Aggressors, 3 Outriders, 3 Eradicators. I brought the Indomitus box with me just to see what it could do. And it actually was interesting. So that was pretty funny.
Okay. Yeah, so is there anything massively different for you between Nephilim and Arks of Omen beyond maybe what we've said, like maybe a little bit more durability, maybe a little bit of trying some other units out? Has anything else massively changed for you? I think I asked you about Dante, because a lot of people still love Dante. You said to me that you don't run him anymore because you think he's too expensive.
Yeah, the last time I ran Dante was when I went to the WTC. Or maybe it was Capital City. No, it was WTC. Just because I actually just skewed my list for one purpose and not have all the tools that I would normally want. Because it's a team format. But even in saying that, it still wasn't that crazy skewed. But anyway, my point is with Dante, I just don't like the ability that I'm now just losing 2 really important slots for Warlord traits and relics that I feel like we need in order to play the game, or at least my game. For everyone else, it's going to be totally different. Like for some people, they've made work. Like for example, Jack's made just the Rights of War on the banner with, the Wrath of Baal, and then someone else takes, what is it?
I think he's
like
Teeth
Soul
of Terror
Warden
on his priest as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like as long as it's working for you. Obviously, I know I don't want to always take the easy out by saying that answer, but it really is the truth. Like, I mean, if it suits your playstyle, if that's what works for you, then I mean, go for it. I just personally haven't really seen the value through Dante, unfortunately. And I love the character. Trust me. Don't get me wrong. In the lore, my favorite guys. I might get a Dante tattoo one day, but in the meantime, it's like it's so tough to put him on the table just because it's just like, okay, well, he gives the +1 leadership with his. Well, the banner kind of does that too. Then it's like, okay, now that I'm playing this more, run and gun mobile sort of list, now I finally brought in the banner for the first time, I think, like ever in this edition, like in 9th, I think, like I can remember at least. And now it's like, okay, he has the Wrath of Baal, so it's like, okay, the +2 move is a no brainer currently in Arcs, I believe. The +1 leadership, the fighting and shooting on death potentially, especially when you have 10 to 15 Inferno pistols surrounding the guy. It's pretty intense. And then it's like, okay, well then I think the priest is a non-negotiable for a lot of Blood Angel armies. I can't leave home without him. I think many can't. So it's like, okay, in terms of him now, Selfless Healer that's kind of the most efficient way to run him. Now I've seen a lot of people not running Selfless Healer to save the 30 points and kind of just spend the CP here and there when they need to revive someone, which I have thought about. It's definitely not a bad one, but I just kind of keep going back to the fact that if I need it, just to save the CP in some of those games, it does make a difference personally. So I've kind of leaned towards that. And I'm pretty sure you and I have talked about my custom captain every time I've been on. So why not continue the trend? But the Rights of War with Visage of Death combo, I can't not ever have that in my list. At least until 10th edition. We'll see what that brings. But I don't know why I can't.
We're 50-50 there in that, like, I will pretty typically always bring the priest unless I have loads of CP to do Forlorn Fury and adaptive strategy. And then I love Rights of War. I run it on my captain on the bike all the time, and he's like 7 wounds, toughness 5, and he's obsecking himself and everything around him. Because typically, like, Blood Angel is mostly his core, right? We very rarely run shit that's not core. So it's like, that's for me why I can't run Dante. It's just like, I love Rights of War. Rights of War wins me games every single time I take it.
Yeah.
And people get surprised, like sometimes I advance a bike captain 20 inches onto an objective and they're like, what the hell are you doing? You could have charged there. And I was like, I just want to touch that because I've got rights of war and now that's mine and you just lost 4 points and I just gained 4 points, It's like it's like a no-brainer sometimes. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's see what other questions we have. Is there any strengths or giant weaknesses we have at the moment? The biggest weakness probably would be, for me, it seems like protection against mortal wounds. But, I mean, we have ways of dealing with that with Soul Warden. I don't know. The other thing, I'll tell you what, the thing that I struggle the most with is armies that are entire army is fight first, or the entire army is fight on death. What do you do in those? Because I usually just capitulate and don't win the game when that happens. When I have to fight those armies, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do here, really.
Yeah, so I mean, depending on what army has the fighting on death, of course, makes the difference. So I mean, like when it was Dark Harlequins, that was oppressive, but the way I would deal with them is by doing mortal wounds on the charge to them, just by kind of getting rid of that, or of course just shooting those units just straight up. Now obviously, let's just say you can't do that, they're both behind walls or whatnot. I've thought about this several times, and kind of the way I've approached those matchups is basically just being a lot more cagey and hoping they overextend so I can shoot. So in those matchups, I'll actually take specific secondaries in order to kind of play into me. If we're both going to sit here, that I would still win that game, kind of forcing their hand, right? And a lot of the time when those combat armies know that they have the advantage on you because like they're possibly world leaders now, like a whole unit could just fight on death, or if they're any chaos was incredible for that. And then Emperor's Children, with all the fight lasts they had and the fight firsts, and it was pretty obnoxious. Those armies were taking secondaries like Assassinate, like No Prisoners, because they think they're going to dominate the board, and rightfully so, they will. But then when I'm hiding my 3 characters in the back corner for 5 turns, and you get a 0 on that, I'm still going to win the game. So I mean, I guess to narrow it down to the advice I always give is just forget about the matchup now. The matchup is obviously in their favor, and just always focus on the points and do whatever is best for the points. So if you know they're going to fight on death with like a possessed unit or whatever it is, just throw that sanguinary guard squad into that front possessed, so the possessed now can't push into you. Kill the whole squad outright. Let them kill you, but at least now the next threat is a bit further back, so now you can kind of position from that point of view in terms of like board state. So that's kind of my approach. Now, I recently actually in the major win, I did bring a whirlwind for this instance where I'm like, if I have to go into 2 different spots, and actually I did play Inari, so it did help. Where they just have fight first everywhere. It helped a bit, but then I was kind of seeing very quickly that the whirlwind was impactful, and like I'm pretty sure someone asked me this question a little while ago, and I said it was helpful in 1.5 of my games out of the 6. So it was like, but like don't get me wrong though, the 1.5 it was huge, but then it's just like the other 3 where it's like, okay, I was playing guard, and it's like, okay, I didn't really like have to shut down the Overwatch of one of the tanks, and like the Storm can also shut down Overwatch by either the stratagem it has, or it just simply charges in first to eat the Overwatch, or charging through walls. Anyway, it's just like little things like that kind of remind you that there are nuances to this game. And if you're kind of charging a land fortress out in the open, it's like there's obviously going to be repercussions for that. So just kind of being a bit more smart with how we interact. And maybe you don't have to charge the land fortress. Maybe you just have to charge the thing next to the land fortress and then tag it after, right? So it's just like little tips and tricks like that.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. I've been running no whirlwind for the first time in 9th edition recently, but
how's that feel?
Well, against Iron Hands, when they fucking killed like 4 Blade Guard veterans on a charge, it felt pretty darn bad. And I even transhumaned them on the charge as well.
What unit shot you?
Devastators.
Oh my god!
I mean, they were touching the terrain, so there was no way to get them without like being visible to them, right? So yes, for the most part it's been feeling okay, but I'm with you. It's like sometimes you just need that whirlwind, sometimes you don't. I guess you have a history of a lot of tournament wins. I have 0, so sometimes I don't feel confident enough, I guess, to go to those solo tournaments without it, and then be like, right, I know I'm fighting an army that's got me fight last across the board. I'm going to really struggle here, I guess. But it's experience. I think the points you made are really good, and let's jump on. Yeah, so how do you utilize death? Are you still running 3 Death Company, 3 Sandguard, or have you switched that up? Because that's what everybody was running, right?
Everyone ran that because of Fury of the Lost, right?
I guess, and Armor of Contempt, right?
Huge. Yeah, of course. So for me, I don't leave home without 3 squads of Sanguinary Guard ever. I haven't ever. Sorry, that's a lie. One time I did 2, and that was not worth it. that was back when I was running double Redemptor, double Sanguinary Guard. That's a different life, different
A
life,
long,
past
different life, yeah.
Yeah. So no, but right now I've gone back to my token single Death Company unit. I feel like you absolutely need a Forlorn presence in your army. Doesn't matter what. The 5 is more than enough for the 1 CP. I don't feel the need to ever do 6 or more Death Company for 2 CP plus.
No, I don't
Or
like
sorry,
that
2
either.
CP. Yeah, it's just it doesn't help you. The coherency, you can't actually string back as efficiently for all the buffs that you need. You don't do more damage necessarily. I mean, like, one could argue, I guess, if you're bringing 10 Death Company, if you wanted to try and end a game turn 1 and the guy just misdeployed his whole army, I guess, sure, but like, that's not who we should prepare to beat. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I always make my list thinking I'm going to be playing the top players with the top armies in mind. So 1 Death Company unit to absolutely have them on the back foot a bit, just to kind of respect your threat ranges, is super important. I've been kind of working with a couple of people to help them with Blood Angels, and kind of the advice that I've been giving them is, you have to remember this unit it's very, one-dimensional, right? So it's like, the name of the game personally is flexibility, I feel, for Blood Angels right now in Arks of Omen. And again, I know this is, my thoughts and my takes on this. People can obviously disagree, and obviously everyone's entitled to their own opinions. But just in terms of what I've found success with so far, from my experience, is that different units that add a lot to the game just, go further for you in the long run. So Death Company, we can't fall back with them. We can't do actions with them. So it's like, a lot of times people want to bring those hammers, like, quite literally, like the thunder hammers on them. And it's like, well, why not have 2? So it's like, okay, like, I think 2 is the absolute maximum that you could take. Now, the way I would kind of view that, though, is maybe having 1 squad of like 4 hammers, which I'm currently running. And then if you wanted to have a secondary squad with like a hammer or 2, and then like 3 power swords and 3 inferno pistols, I could see that also being quite efficient. Or just 5 power swords, 5 inferno pistols, 115 points, period. Because now you have 2 different Forlorn options that can do 2 very different things without losing your hammer squad. So I do actually really like that idea, and that's kind of one that I'm kind of starting to come around to and toy with. But I think overall, I think Blood Angels with 1 Death Company and 3 Sanguinary Guard, I think, is still kind of the staple. The only thing that's up for debate, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this too, is I feel like now, because of the loss of Armor of Contempt, and this kind of touches back on question 2 with, a weakness, is durability is definitely not a thing. I recently played a game against Harlequins, the 5-up Invul Harlequins, who are so bad, right? And got my ass handed to me in a practice game, because I was like, wow, when you get shot by 6 boats out in the open, you lose a lot of your army really quick. And no, you cannot hide. So it's like, you learn pretty quickly that you may as well just be touching the cover and be out in the open, because at least you're going to get +1 save in cover, because they move 22 inches and still shoot you at no penalty, right? So it's like, that was really interesting to see. And I mean, I think people are very much overlooking Harlequins. That's the whole other debate. But I'd love to hear your opinion on, going MSU Sanguinary Guard. Do you think personally bigger bricks are still going to be a thing? What do you think?
Well, let me just touch on the Harlequins thing real quick, because the tournament I was closest to winning this year, I had to beat Harlequins at the final table, and
Right.
I was kind of amazed with how much damage they can do and how fast they can do. Like, people, like, I had a TO tell me that they don't like Abandoned Sanctuaries because it gives armies with a pre-game move an advantage. Like, it levels them out on that map. And I was like, have you played Harlequins? Because, like,
Yeah.
this guy's in my deployment zone with everything in turn 1, all
Yep.
over me, killing everything. And that
that's
was
probably
with
with a 4-up Invul, right?
that was with a 4-up Invuln and the
That's
-1
tough.
to hit and no rerolls from the Mirage shields or whatever. I mean, like, that's a horrible matchup for us. So yeah, Harlequins are a nightmare. Death Company, I've run both the 5-man hammers and I've run the Infernal Pistol / Power Swords, and I love what you said, having 2 on the board, because I was running Fury of the Lost.
Yeah.
So having 2 on the board opens up those options, and I actually kind of love the Power Sword Infernal Pistol Death Company. But at the moment, I'm running 2 squads of hammers, and my view with that is Forlorn Fury 1 in turn 1, and then just trade with something else in turn 2 with other hammers. Like, both my hammers should be literally dead by the end of turn 2. They're just going to go like, hey, you know, you kill something that's worth 155 points turn 1 and do it again in turn 2. That's all they're there to do, right? But I do agree, 115 points on those power swords, infernal pistols is great into some matchups. Into others, like Custodes or something with multiple Telemons, then, you know, Custodes have a nasty habit of just being like, yeah, you did no damage to me, okay, let's fight.
Now remove your 5 Death Company models, yeah.
Yeah, I felt the Death Company survivability was lowered a bit, but I felt like Sangre Guard survivability has been lowered so much, because before it felt like they were kind of immune to like small arms fire, you know, like -1, -2, if you were in cover or something, it was just like, right, I'm always just going to save on 2s, so you can't do any damage to me. And then if you're orcs or something, then you're -1 to hit me as well, so you can't even kill me in melee. And then it was like, oh my god, Sangre Guard just get evaporated off objectives now. So I am running just in 5s, and I have gone all infernal pistols because I feel like the bolters never did that much work for me anyway. So I mean, maybe some people seem to love Angelus bolters. For me, they always like plick off like 1 wound or 2. I'd rather a single infernal pistol sneaks through. But yeah, so if you do that, like if you start bringing them down to 5, and then you bring in the Terminators and the Blade Guard, it's a different list. I do feel like, I think the biggest problem maybe is like, it then comes down to terrain, right? So like if you're an event that just has 8 pieces of terrain on the table, and there's not enough places for you to hide all those Death Company, all those Sangre Guard, with everyone getting all these free reserves, which I kind of think breaks the game. Like, I think that, because like Iron Hands will just bring in a Gladiator Reaper, it's super hard to screen the entire board, right? And they'll just like evaporate something from your list. And I've been playing a list that has 3 Gladiators in reserve for Iron Hands, and it's like, okay, I've got not so much survivability, and they're doing so many shots at -2. Like, it's almost at a point where like he doesn't even roll the dice, and that whole squad's just going to be lifted off. So I'm a little bit, I'm in a little bit of a rut, I guess, with like the fast moving. I like fast moving, but I guess I'm not feeling confident enough to run 3 squads of Sangre Guard right now, and I guess that's just where I am in terms of like maybe where my playstyle is, and also dependent on usually what sort of terrain. We see different terrain here in the UK than you see in the US. I actually played like a WTC map, which is the US terrain, against the guy who I play Iron Hands, and he complained there was too much terrain on the board. It's like, so the UTC just has a little bit less terrain, and I guess people here in the UK are used to that. So a little bit of difference, I guess, across the pond, I guess.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, if you saw that stream, right, like that's like the center fixed ruins with, I believe it's 1 large L, 1 like longer small L, a shorter small L, and then like crates on each side of the board. Like, that's like the standard here in Canada, and to me it seems like just enough, like just like gets you by to like be like, okay, I guess I can hide my army. But then I've had a lot of people message me and be like, damn, like that's such a dense board, like wow, like that's awesome, like I loved your list on that super dense board. I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, dense board. But then you're right, it's just really like in terms of just like certain metas, certain areas of the world just play different styles of 40k. And like even playing like at WTC, like that was like with Team Canada, that was like me practicing, was like, okay, like I have to build a different list for this board, because the 21 Sanguinary Guard, they'll work, but the rest of the stuff, that all has to change. Like you don't want to be caught out in the open because you rolled a bad advance with a unit that moves 6 inches or 5 inches, right? So it's like now all of a sudden that kind of had to change drastically. So I mean, I totally agree with you. So it really depends on the board as well.
Okay, we've been live for about half an hour at this point. Let's wrap up here, and we'll be back live on Sam's channel, and there will be a link in the video description, so please find it, click it, and it'll pop up at the end of this video as well. So thanks so much for watching. Come and continue our chat with me and Sam.